Have you ever stopped to wonder, what if the only thing standing between you and the life you desire is a single undisciplined thought? Most people never realize this. They wake up each day flooded by the same emotions, the same reactions, the same doubts, and they call it reality. But Neville Goddard taught something radically different. He believed your world is not happening to you, it's happening through you. And it all begins in the mind. In today's video, you're about to discover something most people overlook: the quiet, hidden power of disciplined thinking. Not in the mystical sense, not in the way you've been told by countless manifestation gurus who offer quick fixes and hollow affirmations. This goes deeper. Neville's approach to thought wasn't about wishful thinking, it was about inner authority. The kind of mental control that silently reshapes everything without ever needing to announce itself. Change your conception of yourself, Neville said, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. These words are not poetic fluff. They are precise psychological instructions for rebuilding your life from the inside out. And in the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to discipline your thoughts using Neville's most powerful yet often overlooked methods. You'll understand how your assumptions are quietly running your life, how undirected thoughts are draining your potential, and how a focused, consistent inner voice can move you toward your highest self, without anyone around you knowing what you're doing. This isn't about controlling the outer world. It's about mastering the inner landscape, where every change must begin. And by the end of this video, you won't just understand why Neville's teachings remain so powerful decades later. You'll know exactly how to apply them in your own life, starting today. Because here's the truth: every breakthrough, every answered prayer, every coincidence that turns your life around begins with a single disciplined thought. But let me ask you something. How many of your thoughts are actually chosen by you? How often do you replay the same emotional reactions, the same inner dialogues day after day, thinking you're just responding to life, when in fact you're simply following mental loops formed years ago? Neville taught that these loops, these assumptions, are the root of your circumstances. Most people try to change their lives by changing the world. He reversed it. You change the world by changing your inner conception of yourself. And that requires discipline, not the kind that exhausts you, but the kind that frees you. Because when your thoughts are no longer random, no longer reactive, no longer dictated by the past, you become the author of your own experience.
You may have heard about the power of imagination.
You may have even tried visualizing, scripting, or repeating affirmations. But if you've ever felt like something's missing, this is why. Without thought discipline, your mind becomes a battlefield of contradiction. One moment you imagine success, the next you worry about failure. One moment you affirm abundance, the next you feel small and undeserving. This internal conflict quietly erases progress. Neville's work offers something more intelligent, a method to sustain your inner vision with clarity and stability. In this video, we'll walk you through the lesser-known techniques Neville used to train the mind: the mental diet method, assumption anchoring, inner speech correction, and identity-based visualization. You'll learn why 24 hours of mental discipline done correctly can set in motion a series of changes that appear miraculous to others, but were entirely intentional to you. You'll also learn how Neville approached setbacks, not as failures, but as feedback. He didn't believe in resisting the unwanted. He believed in replacing it, quietly, with confidence and with repetition. What makes his method different is not just the use of imagination, it's the commitment to inner consistency. That's where discipline comes in. Not force, but faith. Not effort, but focus. The more consistently you dwell in your chosen state, the more natural it becomes, until it's no longer something you have to remember to do. It becomes who you are. So don't expect surface-level tips. Expect depth. Expect insight. Expect to be challenged, to think in a new way about your own mind and what you allow to live there. Because here's what most people will never tell you. Thought discipline is not glamorous. It's invisible, and that's why it's so powerful. You may not see results today. You may not feel different tomorrow, but keep going, and one morning you'll wake up in a life that reflects the thoughts you once chose in silence. That's the gift Neville left us. The reminder that we are never truly stuck, only undisciplined. And when we correct the inner pattern, the outer picture changes without force, without struggle, and often without warning. If you ever felt like your thoughts are running ahead of you, like you're chasing peace, clarity, or success, this video is your reset point. Watch until the end, and you'll learn how to bring your attention back under your control, because nothing changes until your thoughts do. Welcome to Ignis Mindset, where timeless wisdom meets practical tools for transformation. If you're ready to take full responsibility for your inner world and finally see the results ripple outward, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This is not just another motivational video. This is the beginning of a quieter, stronger, more focused you. And it all starts now. Before we talk about the methods for disciplining your thoughts, we need to understand what Neville Goddard truly meant by mental discipline. Too often, this idea gets misrepresented. People think it's about forcing your mind into silence or battling every negative idea that comes up. But Neville saw it differently. He saw the mind not as a battlefield, but as a garden. And mental discipline wasn't about suppression, it was about cultivation. In Neville's teachings, imagination was not some daydreaming tool. It was the workshop of creation. He believed that what you imagine with feeling becomes the blueprint for your experience. But imagination without control is scattered energy. Thoughts drifting without purpose lead to results drifting without direction. That's why Neville emphasized thought control, not as a form of pressure, but as a form of mental order, a way of keeping your attention loyal to the life you truly want to live. He explained that everything you assume to be true about yourself, about others, about the world is quietly working itself out in your life. These assumptions operate beneath the surface, often without your awareness. They don't need your permission to influence your behavior, your reactions, or your expectations. So to Neville, mental discipline meant the ability to interrupt automatic assumptions and consciously install new ones, those that reflect your desired reality. But this has nothing to do with controlling what happens outside you. That's a misunderstanding of how this works. You are not here to micromanage circumstances or force things into place. Neville never said to go out and manipulate your environment. He said, change your conception of yourself, and the world will mirror it. That's a radically different idea. To put it simply, you don't bend the world, you realign your mind. You don't demand results. You dwell in the state where the results already exist mentally. You assume the identity that matches the life you desire, and stay loyal to it, especially when there's no evidence yet. That's the discipline. Not the outer struggle, but the inner stability. But here's the real question. If it's this simple, why do so few people practice it? Why is mental discipline so rare? Because we live in a world designed to fracture your attention. From the moment you wake up, your phone, your environment, even your own past conditioning are all trying to pull your focus in 100 directions. So you're encouraged to react, to scroll, to compare, to worry, and slowly, this becomes your normal state of mind. Reactivity, not creativity, not conscious choice, just reaction. Neville warned about this. He said, if you're not careful, your mind becomes a servant to outer facts. You start defining yourself by what's happening outside your bank account, your relationships, your job title, rather than shaping your inner state first. And this is where most people lose the battle without even realizing it. They look around at their current life and accept it as proof of who they are. But Neville insisted, your current reality is just the outpictured result of former assumptions. It's not who you are, it's who you believed yourself to be. There's a huge difference. This is why thought discipline is not optional, it's essential. Without it, you become a prisoner of your own unconscious thinking. Your life becomes a replay of yesterday's reactions, yesterday's doubts, yesterday's identity. Neville didn't teach imagination so you could escape reality. He taught it so you could reshape it by reshaping yourself. But the truth is, thought discipline is hard for people because it's invisible work. No one applauds you for choosing a better thought. No one sees you rejecting a fearful image and replacing it with a calm one. There's no immediate reward. It feels thankless until one day the results show up and they seem impossible to explain. Most people don't stick with the process long enough. They do it once, maybe for a few days, and when they don't see change, they stop. They return to default thinking, not knowing that consistency is the key. Neville described the mind like a river, always flowing. If you don't direct it, it will flow in the path of least resistance, usually right back to your old self-concept. This is also why Neville placed so much emphasis on assumption, not hoping, not wishing, but assuming. Assumption is the mental position you take as if it were already true. It doesn't ask, what if? It declares this is, and to hold an assumption steadily in the face of opposing evidence that requires discipline. It means when fear comes up, you don't argue with it. You don't analyze it. You gently return your attention to the state you've chosen. That's the kind of inner strength Neville spoke about. Not noise, not struggle, just quiet, firm redirection. But again, most people struggle here because they haven't trained their minds. They let thoughts run wild, and when life reflects that chaos, they call it fate. But Neville taught that fate is nothing more than assumptions solidified over time. Whatever you mentally consent to, especially with repetition, becomes your reality. So ask yourself honestly, what thoughts are you consistently entertaining? What inner conversations do you repeat when no one's listening? Are you mentally rehearsing peace and strength, or are you replaying conflict and fear? This is where the real work lies, not in trying to change others or fight circumstances, but in monitoring your inner climate. Are your thoughts aligned with the person you wish to become? Or are they secretly loyal to the version of you you're trying to grow beyond? Neville called this dwelling in the state. You discipline your thoughts by repeatedly returning to that inner state until it becomes natural, until it becomes familiar. And once it's familiar, it becomes your new normal. But that doesn't happen overnight. It takes commitment, not perfection, just persistence. Thought by thought, you reshape your mental landscape, not by force, but by choice. And slowly your world responds, not because you pushed it, but because your inner structure changed. And the outer world, as Neville often reminded us, is simply a reflection of your inner arrangements. So when you find yourself doubting, when you feel pulled back into old thinking, remember this. That moment is not a failure. It's an opportunity. It's a chance to return, to redirect, to reclaim your attention. And the more you do this, the stronger your inner focus becomes. Because the goal is not to control the world, it's to govern your thoughts. And through that, your life takes shape in ways most people will never understand. Assumption in Neville Goddard's teachings is not wishful thinking. It's a mental decision, a deliberate stance of consciousness. When he said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he was guiding us toward a disciplined inner state, one that doesn't fluctuate with outer appearances. You don't wait for life to give you permission to feel successful, loved, abundant. You feel it first. You dwell in it mentally, persistently, even when nothing on the outside reflects it yet. This act of assuming is powerful because it bypasses logic. It doesn't ask if something is reasonable, likely, or practical. It simply claims the state is already true. And when you do this with sincerity and repetition, your inner conversations begin to align. You stop rehearsing failure and begin rehearsing confidence. You stop defending your limitations and begin embodying new possibilities. Neville stressed that consistency in assumption leads to consistency in life. The outer reflects the inner. Always. So if you're mentally scattered, identifying as powerful one day and defeated the next, your world will reflect that instability. But when you consistently return to the self-concept of your ideal, regardless of evidence, your thoughts become steady. And that steadiness translates into action, into decision-making, into the way you move through the world. You walk as the person you've assumed yourself to be. You speak from that identity. You respond from it. This is where the invisible begins to take form, not because you forced it, but because you stopped contradicting it. You gave it space to grow inside you, and like a seed watered daily, it began to unfold naturally. The world starts to cooperate with the inner structure you've built because you're no longer working against yourself. Neville's concept of the mental diet comes directly from this foundation. It's a method of becoming aware of your thoughts, not in fear, not in judgment, but with watchful attention. Just as you monitor what you eat to take care of your body, you monitor what you think to take care of your mind, because every thought carries a seed. Every internal dialogue becomes part of your self-concept. He suggested taking even just 24 hours to discipline the mind completely. For one day, refuse to entertain any thought that contradicts your ideal. Any thought of lack, unworthiness, fear. Observe it, then gently let it go. Return to the chosen state, not by force, not by anxiety, but through deliberate refocus. This practice, though seemingly small, can cause tremendous internal shifts. Most people don't realize how often they agree with defeat until they begin this practice. The mental diet is not about pretending that negative thoughts don't exist. It's about refusing to dwell in them. They may pass through, but you no longer give them a seat at your table. You begin to curate your inner world, selecting thoughts that support the version of you that you have decided to embody. And here is the real turning point. This practice reveals just how deeply ingrained some thought patterns are. Thoughts of comparison, fear, self-doubt, they often show up disguised as logic or realism. But Neville taught that realism is just an agreement with the visible world. And if the visible world is a mirror of past thoughts, then agreeing with it is simply choosing to repeat it. That's why identifying and replacing negative thought patterns is central to inner transformation. You must be honest with yourself. Notice the stories you repeat. Notice the identity you slip into when you're tired, triggered, or feeling small. These moments are not evidence of your truth. They're echoes of an old self-concept, and they only survive because they've gone unquestioned. Neville didn't ask you to suppress those thoughts. He asked you to become conscious of them. The moment you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, or things never work out for me, you pause, you interrupt, you replace, not with fantasy, but with a new decision about who you are. You say to yourself, I am the one who always finds a way, or I am chosen, I am capable, I am already becoming what I desire. The goal is not to achieve a perfect mind. It's to become a loyal guardian of your own inner story. You start choosing thoughts that are aligned with the future you want to experience, not the past you want to outgrow. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. What once felt like effort becomes your normal way of thinking. At first, it may feel strange. You may notice resistance. You might even feel like you're lying to yourself. That's only because you've been loyal to the old story for so long. But repetition changes identity, and identity changes experience. This is why Neville placed so much importance on the feeling. It's not enough to repeat words, you must feel the reality of what you're claiming, not as a hope, but as a lived truth. You must saturate your mind with the feeling that it's already yours, that nothing is missing, that your identity is already shifted, and life is simply catching up. And in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when doubts whisper, when fear tries to sneak back in, you return again. You assume the state again. You feed your mind thoughts that build, not thoughts that break. This is the path of real change. Invisible at first, but undeniable in time. Neville often reminded his students that everything begins within, not some things, everything. If your relationships aren't reflecting what you desire, look within. If money seems limited, look within. If opportunities seem absent, look within. Not to blame, but to reclaim your authority over your assumptions. Thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become identity. And identity sets the course for everything that follows. So when you change your assumptions, you change the ground beneath your feet. The world may look the same, but your experience of it transforms. People respond differently. Events rearrange themselves. Openings appear where walls once stood. Not because you forced life, but because you disciplined the mind. You remained loyal to the vision. You walked mentally in the direction of your future until it became your present. And this is not reserved for the few. It's not about talent or luck or special gifts. It's available to anyone willing to observe their thoughts, assume a new truth, and practice that inner shift consistently. Every time you redirect a thought, you are choosing your future. Every assumption you hold becomes a silent request to life. And life, whether you realize it or not, is always listening. Inner speech is not a background noise in Neville Goddard's philosophy. It is the silent architect of your world. He said, "All that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow." What you repeatedly say to yourself, whether in moments of confidence or despair, becomes the tone of your life. These inner conversations are not harmless. They are creative forces. Every assumption you repeat silently, every doubt you whisper in your mind, every hope you rehearse, each is a seed. Repetition solidifies identity. If you continually tell yourself that life is hard, that people don't understand you, that things never work out, you're not just venting. You're constructing. You're confirming to your subconscious who you believe you are and how life treats you. Neville taught that your inner conversations define your mental habits, and habits, over time, become automatic. So the most crucial work isn't about convincing others. It's about retraining the voice inside. The power of repetition lies in its subtlety. You may not notice the effect immediately, but the influence is cumulative. The thought you repeated yesterday becomes slightly easier to repeat today, and the more you engage in inner speech that supports your ideal, the more natural that identity becomes. You begin to think, speak, and act from a different center, not by force, but by practice. That's why Neville emphasized focused visualization, not as a form of escape, but as mental discipline. Visualization in his teachings isn't about dreaming, it's about aligning. It's the intentional act of forming a clear, vivid mental image of your desired reality and then rehearsing it until it becomes familiar. When you visualize the same scene, feel the same emotion, imagine the same outcome, you are training your mind to become loyal to one idea. This is discipline in its purest form, choosing one mental image and dwelling in it long enough for it to override contrary suggestions. The world will continue to offer you evidence of the old story, but your task is to remain faithful to the new one. That faithfulness is tested not when it's easy, but when everything seems to contradict your vision. And yet it is in those moments that true discipline is forged. Neville once described visualization as thinking from the end, not thinking of what you want, but thinking from it as though it is already real. You don't just see yourself in the ideal scenario, you feel its reality. You think and act as if it were already your state of being. This inner practice is not a trick. It's a reconditioning of the mind. It rewires how you respond, how you feel, how you show up. But this kind of mental discipline doesn't occur by accident. It isn't a once-a-week ritual or a moment of inspiration. Discipline is daily. It is a choice you make repeatedly, not because it's glamorous, but because it's effective. Just like physical training, your mind strengthens through repetition. If you want peace, you must practice peaceful thoughts. If you want success, you must refuse to indulge in mental images of failure. Neville made it clear that you are always planting something in the garden of your mind. Every idle thought, every moment of complaint, every burst of envy, these are seeds, and they grow. Not because life is unfair, but because consciousness is always creating. So the question becomes, what are you repeating? What are you rehearsing internally day after day? Consistency is not about being perfect. It's about returning. When your mind wanders to fear, you gently bring it back. When you notice doubt creeping in, you remind yourself of your chosen state. Discipline is not a punishment. It is the highest form of self-respect. It says, I know where I am going, and I will guide my thoughts accordingly. This is where faith enters the process, but not blind faith. Neville never asked you to believe in something vague or outside of yourself. He pointed to your own ability to shift perception. Faith, in this context, means confidence in the power of thought. It is the quiet assurance that changing your inner climate will inevitably lead to changes in your outer world. You are not forcing the world to bend to your will. You are not controlling people or circumstances. You are shaping the only thing that is truly yours, your inner atmosphere. From that place, inspired action arises. Decisions become clearer. Opportunities become visible, not because you chased them, but because you aligned with them internally. Faith is not loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand proof. It simply persists. It continues to assume the desired state, regardless of what appears. This kind of faith is not built in a moment. It's built through repetition, through choosing again and again to think in alignment with your highest vision, until it no longer feels like a vision, but a fact. And even when results seem slow, even when doubts resurface, faith remains a quiet undercurrent. It doesn't panic. It returns to the mental image, to the assumption, to the inner dialogue that supports the chosen outcome. This is the work Neville taught, not to beg life to change, but to change the way you mentally approach life. So your inner speech becomes your tool. Visualization becomes your training ground. Discipline becomes your daily devotion. And faith becomes the steady foundation beneath it all. The repetition of new thoughts, the rehearsal of new feelings, the loyalty to a new identity. This is the invisible labor that precedes visible transformation. You don't need to control outcomes. You only need to guard your mind, nurture your assumptions, and persist in your vision. This is not theoretical, it's practical. It's not mystical, it's mental. Neville gave you the keys not to escape reality, but to recreate it from the inside out. And it all begins with the decision to discipline your thoughts, one moment at a time. Discipline is not about suppressing your thoughts. It's about choosing them. It's not about force or struggle, but about conscious selection. You don't have to be at the mercy of every doubt or fear that passes through your mind. You're not powerless. You are the thinker. You are the one who decides which thoughts to dwell on and which to let go. Neville Goddard reminded us that you rise or fall to the level of your assumptions. Every belief you continue to repeat becomes a staircase, either lifting you higher or keeping you bound to the same place. And the good news, you get to choose which thoughts you rehearse. Start small, one disciplined thought at a time. One moment of awareness where you replace fear with focus. One scene imagined clearly before sleep. That's how the shift begins. Not in grand leaps, but in quiet inner decisions made consistently. If this message resonated with you, give this video a like to let us know. And don't forget to subscribe to Ignis Mindset for more insights rooted in the timeless teachings of Neville Goddard. Your transformation doesn't start tomorrow, it starts now, in thought.